I have a question for Rick or somebody. Where's the best place to go if you want to become an AES member? Would it be AES.org or what's the best direction?
AES.org works. It might be a little bit hard to guess your way through the menus, but I think there's a membership tab that you can click on. There's also a link on our website.
And what's our website called?
HTTP. You want me to recite it or what?
No, why don't you put it in the chat?
I can do that.
That way people will know.
Yeah.
Because I think it's a good idea because these things are so good to be a AES member. Don't you agree? Don't you think that would be the right thing to do? Because we get these assets and we get Greg to lead us. And it's a good thing. I've been really proud and pleased with the meetings that Dan sort of started way back at the beginning of COVID, and we get this benefit now in a global fashion, and this is all coming under the aegis of AES, and it's worthwhile to be part of the thing that you use. It's like the grocery store. It's almost like Costco, because you can go and you can shop, but you need the card.
You know that you're at the Pacific Northwest AES section meeting when Costco comes up in the discussion.
Well, it is the Pacific Northwest section, so if you want to visit, that would be a way.
For those of you that have never attended our meetings in person before, it was a constant tradition, generally speaking. Sometimes the cookies would be something else, but we would always have cookies and water, Kirkland brand.
There is that too. Yeah. And the reason I spoke up is before everyone came in, people were saying, when should we make the pitch for being an AES member? And somebody said at the end and somebody said at the beginning, and I said too much, and they said, why don't you do it? So I just did it. And so it's a good idea. I'm sure. How many whose cameras are on right now are AES members? Yeah, right. There you go. That's good. That's the crowd, you see. So all those people that feel really shamed by not being part of the crowd, feel free to go to AES.org, and it's worthwhile. It's something we've been in forever. Some of these people have been. Who's the longest AES member? Is it Gary or Rick?
We should do a race to see who's got the lowest number.
Oh, 53700, I think is mine.
9102.
Good grief.
Yeah. As far as I know, Rick has the
Rick wins
this beat today.
Well, but Jay McKnight at MRL, his member number is under 10.
Wow.
Ooh.
He's not here tonight, though.
Okay, well, it is about a minute after 6, and we tend to start right on time, so we are going to jump right in. Welcome, everybody. My name is Greg Dixon, and I'm currently serving as the chair for the Pacific Northwest section of the AES. I'd like to welcome all of you here to our meeting tonight, and I'd like to thank you for your time and for being with us tonight for this really awesome meeting. I'm very happy to welcome our guest speaker tonight, who will be Jam Phelps, coming to us all the way from Durham, North Carolina. Jam will be talking about an introduction to the Reaper digital audio workstation tonight, and we're excited to have her with us. We're gonna do a more formal introduction for Jam here in a little bit. I did want to let you know that in the future, next month, our next meeting is actually on the early side of next month. It's going to take place March 3rd, also at 6 p.m. And Micah Hayes, who is one of our committee members, will be presenting a meeting, and the title of the meeting is How Seattle Pacific University Creates Streamable Online Concert Archives. So please join us for that. It should be a really interesting presentation. And if you're a recording engineer who, is in charge of archiving and documenting your work, I think that you'll find that there'll be a lot of interesting thoughts and discussion about that topic for you next month. So again, that's March 3rd with Micah Hayes. That meeting will take place in a hybrid format. So it will be at SPU as well as Zoom. So please join us for that.
And Micah's here if you want him to talk about it.
Micah, sorry about that. I didn't realize you were here. Micah, do you want to say a few words about it?
Yeah, no, it's just basically you covered all the bases, which is that it will be hybrid. So you can be there in person on campus. There'll be an invite that goes out. Some of my students will be there as well. And we'll do a concurrent Zoom session for the meeting. And there'll be a little tour of the facilities, and there'll be, I'll give that presentation on concert archives and how it's basically how our music department has created this archive that we found pretty useful. So, yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, looking forward to it, Micah. Thanks for telling us more about it.
Yeah, thanks.
And let's see, other items of business. We have elections coming up in June. So if you're interested in getting more involved with the Pacific Northwest section, feel free to contact a committee member or me or an officer or me. You can find our contact information on the AES Pacific Northwest website. So feel free to contact us if you're interested. Steve Turnage already went over joining the AES. Thank you, Steve. Now I'm going to talk about some of the technical details, and then I'm going to have Dan Mortensen will make a brief announcement about his initiative, Tea Time Topics. But before we get to Dan, just a few technical details about the meeting. If you're wondering how to ask our presenter questions, please type your questions into the chat tonight. And for the most part, the Q&A is going to take place after the presentation. So we do have a moderator. So if you do have a question about that, clarifying a topic that Jam has gone over, our moderator can help pass that question to our presenter at an appropriate time. But again, feel free to use the chat for questions tonight. While the presenter is giving their presentation, please keep your mics and your cameras muted throughout the presentation. If for some reason your camera does get muted by the organizers of this event, keep in mind that in the end, we have some social activities. And if for some reason we've muted your mic and you can't turn it back on, let myself or any of the other co-hosts of this meeting know, and we'll make sure to unmute your camera. Finally, please use your real name. So if you can, go to Zoom. For instance, for me, I'm on a PC right now, but when I look at my picture, I can click on the 3 dots at the top right, and I can rename myself from there. It may be different for you, but if you have questions about it, you can also post that into the chat and we can help you get your name changed. We do appreciate you using your real name. I think that covers the technical details for the meeting. And at this point, I'd like to pass the mic over to Dan Mortensen to talk about Tea Time Topics.
Thanks, Greg. And if I could elaborate a little bit on the name thing, we'd like your full name. So first and last name. Some people still have a single name, and I'm keeping track of who's here so we can have an accurate count, and it's way easier with your full name. So thank you for changing that. There's this thing that we're doing called Tea Time Topics, which is every Saturday afternoon at 3:30 our time, and it's 6 o'clock our time now. So however that relates to you, wherever you are, where we get together and on Zoom and talk about audio subjects mostly, although not entirely. And sometimes we have guests, and sometimes people do it within the group are the presenters. And rather than rambling on about it, if you want to go to a gallery view so that you can see lots of people, anybody who attends Tea Time Topics, raise your hand, please, so that people can see who those folks are. And it's a real cool, interesting bunch of people, and it's been fun to do. And I do PA systems for my work, and weekends is my prime thing. And I wanted to keep busy during the pandemic, so I started it on Saturdays. Well, I'm getting back to work now, and last Saturday I couldn't do it, and this next Saturday I'm not be able to do it. But Bill Gelhaus is hosting it, and if you want to PM me, I will send you an invitation link to the Zoom meetings. And this week it'll be Bill's, and I think, Bill, it's just whatever subjects come up. Is that?
Yeah, last week it almost turned into This Old House, but
All right.
we actually did talk about some audio. So
Okay.
you never know what, kind of whatever floats our boat at the time. So it makes it interesting.
Yeah, we never have a problem coming up with subjects. It's amazing. And we get into stuff and go for hours. So if you don't like hearing me talk, this weekend would be a good one to show up. So I'll stop there, and we'll go back to the meeting. Thank you.
Thanks, Dan. And thanks for keeping that going. And thanks, Bill, for helping us with that. Oh, one other thing that I forgot to announce is that at the end of the meeting, if you want to stick around and socialize, we are going to have brief intros. So if you want to stick around and say hello, we'll go around and we'll get to know one another a little bit. So please feel free to join us for that if you'd like. At this point in time, I'd like to ask if Angie, would you be willing to help introduce Jam?
Sure.
Okay, great. Thanks, Angie.
Sure. I'm very excited to have Jam Phelps with us. She is a mix engineer, recording engineer. She masters. She owns her own studio, Denk Studios in North Carolina. And she also mixes remotely. And she is an educator. She teaches mixing, and she's been an amazing mentor to me and to a lot of friends in the women in audio groups online. And she's a big advocate for Reaper, and I definitely see why now. I've been thinking a lot about switching from Pro Tools because of the accessibility and affordability of Reaper to a lot of students, especially underrepresented students. So thank you so much, Jam, for being here today.
Welcome. Thanks for the kind words, Angie. I really appreciate it. Been friends with Angie. Weirdly, I moved away from Seattle, and about a year after leaving Seattle, I met Angie through some women in audio groups. So yeah, that's how we know each other. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to share my screen here. So let's go ahead and do that. Share, make sure my sound is shared. Yep, optimized for stereo. So basically, what this is Reaper completely blank. So this is what you would see when you open the program. So we're going to go from what you see when you open the program all the way how to make a track, how to make a MIDI track, busing, all of that. And then I'm going to open up a finished track that I made for, I'm also a core faculty for Omni Sound Project. So I have this particular track that I use for classes all the time. And we'll go in there and I'll show you automation in Reaper, because I know that's something that it's hard to find a tutorial on. And also it's just kind of an interesting, fun thing that you can do in the program. So the first thing that you want to do when you open this up is, your basics, setting up your audio. So for that, you can go to Options, Preferences, or Control P. And if you go to Device, I'm not going to change it because if I do, you won't hear me anymore. But you would click this audio system, and that's where you would pick your driver. I use a ASIO driver, and it shows my interface. And then I select that, and I hit OK, and I'm good to go. Then if you have your plugins and things like that already in your computer, Reaper will find them if they're in their program files section. But if you're not seeing a plugin, you can just click this VST here, and you can edit your path list to search for your plugins in this specific part, and you can hit rescan and it'll pull them up. Reaper uses or accepts all VST plugins. So anything that you use in any other DAW, as long as there's a VST, VSTi, VST3, VST2, you can go ahead and use those in Reaper. Almost all plugins have those options. Whereas in Pro Tools, I think it's AUX or AXX, I'm not sure. Those are the plugins specifically for Pro Tools. So you would just download the VSTi. So now I have my screen open and I'm ready to get going. What do I do? So all you have to do to create a track in Reaper is double click here or double click here, and you have created a track. So we're just going to double click right here and you'll see our track. So this down here is our mixer. This is where we control our meters and levels and such. And then this is our track where we add plugins and such and can see the audio across the screen as we record. It also creates a master bus for you. So it automatically has that available. You don't actually have to set one up. It does it for you. And there you can put things onto your master bus that you might want, like a multi-band compressor or something like that you want on there. And you can control those volumes. I always like to leave this at 0, but if you did want to create, maybe turn it down and things like that, you can do that here in the master bus. Then what you want to do is to set your inputs. You can just click right here. I'm going to be right clicking right here, and it will give me my inputs that I can use. So if I want to do a mono, now if I had my ASIO set up, it would give me all of my available inputs for my interface. But right now it's just saying left, right, because I'm using a direct sound so that y'all can hear what I'm going to actually play. And that's how it works through Zoom. And there's nothing I can do about it. So you choose your input, and it would say here, it would say like input 1 or input 2, all the way up to how many pre's you have on your interface. If you wanted to do a stereo input, you could do that. And it would say which 2 channels on your interface would you like to hook up for recording? And you just choose that. And then I'll talk about input MIDI when I get to the MIDI section. So once you've chosen which pre you want to use from your interface, or which input you want to use from your interface, then you're pretty much ready to go. How you record is you just hit this button and you are armed to record. And then once this is showed armed, I'm actually going to set this to MIDI just so that it doesn't make this horrible feedback noise because it's in direct sound. But you would just hit that to record, and now you're armed to record. And then all you have to do is hit this record button here and it will start recording. Turn that off. To set a metronome or click track, you just click here. And then to change the stats, you would simply right click and you get all of these metronome features. You can change from if you want your beat to go bap, boop, 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 or if you wanted it to be bap, boop, or even all loud clicks all through. You can make those changes here. You can change the primary beat volume, so how loud that main beat is hitting and how loud the secondary is. So if you're playing drums and you need that click track to be louder, you can adjust that in here. You can also turn it on to run only during recording, only during playback, or whatever you wanted to do there. You can actually, this is pretty neat. So if you wanted to, instead of having that click, click, click sound, let's say you had a drummer that was like, I can't stand it, I'd really like it to be a wood block. You can actually put in samples from your computer, or like a sample pack of what you want these beats to sound like. So it could be anything you wanted. It could be my voice going 1, 2, 3, 4 if you wanted to. So that's pretty cool. You can also change the frequency of the beat so that it isn't so harsh on your ears if you wanted to do that as well. And that is the metronome settings there. All right. So up here we have this I. This is your project settings. So this is where you could change your sample rate. So if you wanted to do 48 or 441, either one of those, you could go ahead and do that. And you can change the beats to time. Now, the reason you'd want to do this is this kind of controls your BPM. We're going to leave it at beats position, but let's say you loaded something and, oh no, I loaded a whole project, but I forgot to put my BPM in. You can just change this to time and change this to time, change your BPM and it won't mess up the song. However, if this is at beats and here, and you put something in and you want it to change from one tempo to another, you leave that like that, change your BPM, and it smushes or lengthens it to fit in to the BPM. Then it's just all the good stuff like how many bits and blah, 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 and this and that. You can change your BPM here, but there is an easier way to do that, and I'm going to show that. Another thing is you can edit video in Reaper. So there are some video settings here, like you can set your frame rate and things like that. The video editing in Reaper is really cool because you can see the video and manipulate the sound. So if you have a video that has maybe is too quiet, it puts the sound on a separate track, and you can use all your plugins in Reaper and all your, Isotope RX or whatever you have to manipulate the sound with your video, and you can edit so that it all goes in there. So that's pretty cool. I like that feature. So this is your snap. So this will make it so that when you click, it snaps to a bar. If it's on, it's off right now. So you can click anywhere. If you want to snap, you do that. That also works when you're editing something. So if you wanted to do that, I'll show that when I open my project. And those are like the basic things you need to know. This is undo, redo. You can also right click on undo and it'll show all your changes you've ever done. So if you mess something up and you're like, oh, that was like 5 steps ago, but I don't want to undo what I just did, you can actually right click on there and it will give you a full list of all your undos, and you can go redo that one. So that's pretty neat. Over here is your BPM. You can either click on this and change it. So if we change it to 100, then it's all right there changed. Or you can do a tap. So if you're listening to something, you can just tap on your mouse, the beat, and it'll say, okay, that's 112. You'd also change your time signature here to any time signature that you want. Let's say that your song's in 6/8. You just write it in there, hit enter, and your song is now in 6/8. So that's pretty neat. Super, super easy. We're going to change it back to 4/4. All right. So now I'm going to show you how to set up a bus in Reaper. It's the easiest thing it's my favorite thing of all things in Reaper is how incredibly easy it is to set up sins and buses. It's insane. So all you do, I know you're all going to be shocked. Double click to create a new track. Take this route button here, hold it down, drag it over, and drop. Now you have a bus. You can control how much you want to send in. If you want to send audio, if you want to send MIDI, if you want it to be panned before it goes in, how much you want it to fade in and out. It's all controlled here. And then you just close this. And then you control the volume of your bus here and the volume of your main track here on this meter. And that is how it's done. So how you put a plugin on a track is very simple. You would just hit this FX button here, and this opens up your plugins. And what's cool is it gives you all of them and you can type. So let's say that I wanted to put on like Metronome. I could just type here, go to Metronome and load that on up. Or if you want, you can go by, okay, VST3s. These are all my VST3s. These are my instruments that I have available. There's categories. So if I just wanted all my delays, they would be there. Or you can just search for the one that you want. You can also set favorite categories. So if there's ones that you like, you can actually like create a favorites in categories and just have those there for faster workflow. You can also have them by developers. So let's say, oh, I really want to use my Slate Digital plugins. I'll click there and there's the Slate Digital plugins that I have available. So if you can't remember the name of something, but you know who made it, you can search by it there as well. And all you have to do, we'll just use a Reaper plugin. They're all REA. So if we want a compression, we just do this recomp. We hit add or we double click. I usually double click because it's faster. And there is my plugin right there for you. All right. So now I'll show you how to do, before I go any further, did anybody have any questions? I can't look at the chat and see before I go on. You good?
Jam, if you want to save questions for later, but there was one, Rick was asking, what if the source is an already existing track or file?
What if the source is a already existing track or file?
And
What do
I
you-
think that was from the input list. Is that right, Rick?
Oh, so if you wanted to input a existing file into Reaper?
Right.
Yeah. Okay, I'll show you that real quick. So you said insert media file. And let's say that you wanted to put in, I bet I have, here, Atrocity Girl. Oh, there's nothing in there because you're down here. That's a person who won't care if I have something. So let's say that I wanted to put in something from this song and I wanted these 2 tracks right here. I would just select the track, hit control again, hit open, and then it'll say separate tracks or single track. You want a separate track like that, boom. And so that drops both of those in there and they are controlled together. And then if you click away, then you can manipulate one or the other, and it's put it on 2 separate tracks there. So that's how you would input like a whole session into Reaper.
And it creates those tracks rather than interfering with something you've already set up.
Yep. As long as you click in a space that doesn't have a track. So if I were to click here and do that, it would put these over top. But if you click in an empty spot where there's not a track, you don't even need to have a track to do it. You just click any space with the empty track and then insert media file and boom.
Good.
Yeah, easy peasy. And since I have these tracks in here, I can show you some trimming and stuff like that. But let me show you how to load a MIDI item first, and then I'll show you how to like trim and split and all that fun stuff. So what you would do is first you want to, I'm hitting Control P, and you want to go to, you have to make sure your MIDI device is on before you do this, or it doesn't work. You go to MIDI device, select the MIDI device that you want. So mine's a Casio USB MIDI. Hit OK. And that is because I've already installed the drivers. So it automatically loads drivers into Reaper. You don't have to download them, then go into Reaper and search for them. When you restart Reaper, it searches for all your plugins and all your drivers automatically, which is pretty neat. So then I'm going to click here and I'm going to go MIDI, Casio USB MIDI, all channels. And then once I arm it to record, you can see that the meters are going, but there's no sound, right? You see that going? So what you have to do is you have to add an instrument to it. So let's say that we want to add just ample bass because it's a nice non-laggy plugin. So here's my bass guitar. And now that I have that loaded, it plays. Now let's say that I didn't want to actually play MIDI, which for that, you just hit record and you can play your MIDI and have a ball. If you didn't want to actually play MIDI, you just wanted to MIDI map. It's super easy. Just highlight the section that you'd like to add the bass to. So let's say these. And we're going to stay with the snap on so that I can get the full amount. You're going to do insert new MIDI item. And now you have a MIDI item blank in here. And if you open this up, now you have your MIDI mapper. So you could go in and draw. If you look over here, it tells you the note that you're on. So you can see those moving. The snapper will keep you in grid. You can quantize with this cue. So if you draw a bunch and you want them to all be the same length, position, and land on the same time, quantizing, you would just open this up and here's use grid, all notes, position or position and length, position, note end, all those options for quantizing. And then you just say commit and okay, and you've done that. Or you can just go on here. And you can just go on here and say, I want this note, this note, this note, whatever you wanted to do. And then you can hit, let's mute these tracks that I have no idea what's on them. And now it plays that in the rhythm. This is 1 and 2 and. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 here. So that's how you would draw MIDI. Pretty easy. Super easy. Then if you made a mistake, you could just double click to get rid of a note. You can grab a note by just hovering your mouse over it, holding down and dragging for length. You can move the position by just holding down and moving it. You can also change notes that way as well. I realize you probably can't hear me over the bass plucking. So, and then if you wanted to remove that track, you would just right click on it and you could remove the track. If you wanted to freeze it to wave form, so let's say your MIDI is perfect and you really want it to just be a waveform so that you could add some plugins or fading or whatever you need to do, you go ahead and hit render freeze tracks to mono or stereo, and that would create a wave track for you. You can also duplicate the track. Let's say you have a MIDI item and you like the beat and the pattern, but you want to change to another instrument. You could duplicate this track here and it would just create, boom, just the same one with the same effects and everything in there. And then if you want to remove it, you can either click on it and hit delete one selected track, or you can right click on it and just say remove track. Boom. All right. So that's MIDI. So I have this file here and I noticed that there's this weird blip here and I want to get rid of it. All I have to do is, you see the, I almost pointed at my screen with my finger. That would have been funny. You see this little grab tool here. You just pull it over. And if you say, oh, I want that blip back, you just pull it back. So it just does that. If you want to fade, you just pull the mouse up to the top here and you get a fader. If you want to change the position of the fade, like what type of fade it is, you can right click. Oh, sorry. You can right click and it changes the style of the fade as well. You can do that at the end as well on the other side of the track, on this side, and fade it this way as well. Now let's say that you want to get rid of this section here. All you have to do is click where you want to remove and hit the S for split. And you can split here as well and hit delete and you get rid of that area. If you'd like to not have it snap to the grid when you're deleting, you just take this off here and now you have a little bit more of surgical control there. So that's editing a track. If you'd like to copy this one and put it onto a new track, you can just right click, copy items. Hold on a second. It's got something in my eye. I apologize. You just copy and then you can put it anywhere and hit Control V and it'll paste it into the new track. I apologize. I think something just flew into my eyeball. Okay, and now you can move this track around that way. So that's pretty much the basics of Reaper, how you do the editing, how you add a plugin, how you make a bus, how you duplicate a track, split a track, how you remove a track, render and freeze. So the next thing that Angie really wanted me to touch on was automation. But before we move on to that, does anybody have any questions on basic editing in Reaper before I move on to automation? Are we good?
Jam, could you show just one of the effects, like one of the EQ or compressors that come with it?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Awesome.
So Reaper comes with a lot of plugins. So we're just going to put our EA because that's how they all start. And these are the VSTs that they come with. They come with EQ, which is, this is basic EQ. You can manipulate it in here, just like any other EQ.
The sound of my voice is welcome to make themselves known.
There's our comp.
Start each test.
Sounds like somebody needs to mute.
First with an alert.
Thank you. All right. There's the, it comes with a compressor as well. So this is a compressor, attack, release, wet, dry, works really well, has a nice visual meter on there. There is one of my favorite plugins that they have is the Re-X Comp. I actually have access to a lot of multiband compressors, like really nice pro multiband compressors. And I don't even use them because I only use this one because I love it so much. And it has a lot of really good presets. So like I like the Super Solid 2 a lot. But this is a really cool multiband compressor and you can manipulate it just like, you know, anyone. But this one actually I find works the best at really honing in those frequencies without squashing things too much. So I'm a huge fan of that. Then they have all of these crazy JS plugins that you could spend hours just getting into. There's stereo wideners, delays. There's ones that allow you to, like this one here. This one's pretty cool. This one allows you to trigger a MIDI. So if you wanted to do drum triggers, you could actually put a sample here and it would humanize it and trigger it the same way that the person was playing the kick drum. So that one is another one of my favorites. Yeah, there's a lot of really cool stuff in here. If you wanted to dig into what all these plugins do and all of the plugins available, if you go to reaper.fm and you scroll down to the bottom, there is videos by a gentleman named Kenny Joya, who is like the man. And he breaks down every single aspect of Reaper by topic with a really good video. It's also the Reaper Madness channel on YouTube. So it goes into detail about every single one of these plugins. And when I first started using Reaper, I didn't have access to any third-party plugins. And I was doing full mixes with just the Reaper plugins, and it was doing a pretty okay job. And some I just still use all the time regardless. Does that answer your question, Angie?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and close this one. Sure, why not? And that's the thing, is that it doesn't let you close without asking if you want to save it, which is nice. It also auto saves your recordings every 5 minutes. It won't save your project every 5 minutes without you telling it to, but it will save your recording. So if you're in the middle of a session and you've recorded 5 guitar tracks and then something happens, like your computer gets kicked and unplugged, you can actually go in, open the project, and under the project file, it'll show all of those WAV files that you lost, which is pretty cool. How you save is same, Control Command S, just like everything else, or File Save Project, which I do instead of hitting the button because I like the visual of like seeing that I saved it. It's like part of my neurosis. So this is a project that I made. It's just a song that I whipped up for a lot of my Omni classes or like my YouTube tutorials. So I am not the best singer in the world, but I do all right. So it is my voice on here, but it's just to kind of show how things work in real life. So you can also set all your track colors custom. Another cool thing about Reaper, this is just reminded when I was thinking about track colors, is you can get Pro Tools like sleeve or a Logic sleeve for these. So you can actually get customized downloadable templates that will make Reaper look exactly like Pro Tools or Logic if that's what you want to do. There are some fun ones out there, like you can make Reaper look like the deck from Star Trek and like some cool stuff that people have nerded out and taken the time to do. So that's pretty cool. But to change a track color, you can select them all by hitting Control, and you can just click on them and just right click track color, and you can set to a custom color, or you can make them random, and that'll make all those tracks the same color. You can also highlight the whole screen and just set them to random colors if you want to just have it look pretty. But I like to keep my colors organized by, this is all cello. So I want it all to be purple because I want all my cello to be purple. So I know it's in a group together. I also make like all my drums blue and that sort of thing. So this is that project. So the biggest thing that the reason why we automate, I guess y'all are in the engineering society, so you probably know this, but it's just to create dynamics in a song. So if you get to the chorus and you just want the kick and the snare to be a little louder, or you want the vocals to be a little louder, you can do that within Reaper very easily. So let's go ahead and just listen. We're just going to listen to this section of the song. Make sure that you can hear it.
You're the only one I can trust with this heart, loving our spark. You are my life. You gave me a fresh start. Hold me tight, don't let me go.
Okay, so let's say that we want this section of the verse to just be a little bit louder. We can go to our verse vocal, and all we do is we hit this trim button here, and we're going to select volume. Don't worry about all this other stuff. It's, if you want to get really nerdy, go watch some Reaper Madness and you can get all this, but I basically just use it for one thing. So I click this volume here, and this shows up this green section, and this is just where my dB is set right here. So right now we're at negative 2.17 dB, and this will manipulate that. So there's a couple ways you can do this. You can hit Control and make a pinpoint on each side, and then make a second pinpoint because you only want to manipulate this area. This is similar to Logic. And then you can drag this up and down as you want. Or if you wanted it to just increase in volume as you went, you would just take this 4 square and pull up just this corner, and it'll increase in volume. And you can do this on your buses as well if you wanted that delay to be louder. So let's just show you this section of the vocal. It's going to get from really quiet to really loud here.
You gave me a fresh start. Hold me tight, don't let me go.
All right, so it goes from really quiet to gets louder. Now let's say that I just wanted my delay part. So I have this delay bus here. Let's say that I just wanted the delay to get louder. So as it's transitioning from the verse into the chorus, that delay will grow in volume. All you have to do is go to your delay bus here, trim, volume, do the same thing. So we're hitting like Control each side, click, click, and then you take this and pull that up so that just that delay is going to get louder.
Hold me tight, don't let me go.
Let's move that just like a little bit.
Hold me tight, don't let me go.
So now that delay is just happening at that point. All right. So like if you wanted just your kick and snare up for the chorus, you just do the same thing. You could just do that for these tracks as well. There, raise my snare up, trim, raise my kick up. And then that way it goes quieter to louder for the drums.
A fresh start. Hold me tight, don't let me go. Don't let me go.
It just gives you that little bit more of energy, and it's subtle. There is one other thing that you can do. Let's say that you have a peak. So you have a piece of the vocal that is just way louder than the other. So let's say it's this section right here, and you've hit it with compression and you just want to take that down. You can do the full thing, or you could zoom by rolling my mouse, zooms in and out. And dragging down here makes track bigger and smaller. Is if you hit Control, you get this little pencil like you did when you were doing the dots, but you could just hold it down and you can draw. Just a little sloppier, but it is pretty cool. And you can move that around by holding that, and they'll do your whole drawing. You can also remove points by either right clicking and saying delete point or alt click. So if you hold alt, that'll get rid of those points that you drew there. Just X's them right out. Or you can just hit undo to the whole drawing if you'd like. Just showing that that's available. And that is automation in Reaper. So I think that pretty much covers like the really, really beginner basics of this program. You can do anything that you can do in Pro Tools and Logic, you can do in Reaper, and you can do it easier, and you can do it without crashing or tons of CPU use. There is videos out that show Reaper being used on like a 10-year-old IBM laptop and stuff, because they're pretty fun. And yeah, I think I'm going to stop. Well, I'll keep my share open just in case anybody has any questions that needs visuals. But yeah, I'd like to open it up to anybody. The question, I see Tucker with his hand up.
Hi, I have a question.
Sure.
So you showed an increase in gain. Let's call it a crescendo. What if I don't want to just make it louder, but I want to make it 1.2 dB louder? How do I dial that in?
Okay. So if you want the whole track louder or just that section?
Either way, either a segment or let's call it a crescendo from point A to point B. I want it to grow, but a very specific amount, and I want to specify the amount.
Okay. So if you can see here, it'll show you when you hold this, it says 0 dB right there. And when you pull it up, it says +2. So you +2 right there. Can do that? There it is, +2 dB. So it shows.
Is there a
you.
way to type in a value?
Unfortunately, there is not, that I have discovered. Automation in Reaper is one of those things that actually, like, this whole being able to do a section of it is in their latest version. So there's one more version after this where they might have adjusted that you could put it in, but I haven't discovered that yet. It is kind of a bummer.
Okay, thanks.
There isn't some sort of you can't select a clip and then control the gain directly by that way, can you?
No, and that is a thing that Pro Tools has where you can like highlight. I've seen it happen where you like highlight the section and then you can control the volume in there. Unfortunately, Reaper doesn't have that feature, and this is why I specifically kind of wanted to show automation in Reaper, because it is like one of the few things that I think is a little bit behind the other DAWs, but I think that once you see how to do it, even though it's not the most efficient or fastest way, it at least makes it, make a little bit of sense. But yeah, I would say that all pros, but my only con is the inefficiency of automation in Reaper is probably my only complaint that I've had with it. And I've been using it for like 4 years. That's kind of when I wanted to show it. It's like the one con.
Thank you.
Yeah. All
Two
right,
people say that Reaper does have clip gain.
It does? Somebody should show me because I haven't been able to find it yet.
Oh,
I'm behind the times.
I think if you Jam,
Yeah.
I think if you click on the trim right there, and then if you look in see it where it says volume pre-effects, just
I see
below
volume.
width, that
Okay.
is essentially a clip gain control, because of course clip gain affects the amplitude of the audio pre-fader.
Okay,
So that's a way that we can control the clip gain.
cool. How do you select just the section? Or do you just change it in here? Because it's, or you would hit
You
control
change
here,
it.
like
You change
this?
it just like the way that you've been doing automation all along. It's just now pre-fader
cool.
as opposed to post-fader.
Cool, yeah, I see it. Thanks, homie. See,
You're
even
welcome.
I learned something cool and new about this program every single day.
Me too. And I learned so much from, I don't know why my video is not popping up, but
I see.
that's okay. You can see me.
Yeah.
I learned something new every month or so. I'll have some sort of epiphany, and aha moment. If you wouldn't mind me sharing a couple of them with some of our members, because
Oh, please do.
some of these
Yeah.
things, like, so one of the things that Jam didn't show us is that, and I'm sure she knows all about, is the time stretching mechanisms.
Oh, yeah.
And so, like, if you I'm a sound designer, and that's, I also do recording engineering, but I do a lot of sound design within Reaper. So I'm mangling and editing and using all those different fade shapes that Jam showed us tonight. And Reaper, as Jam has mentioned, is so fast. I can't imagine going back to any other DAW because I can, but like time stretching, for example, Jam, why don't you just show them how that works?
Yeah. So you just hold this and hit Alt, and it will stretch your audio and move your audio around like that.
And this uses an algorithm that's used in SoundForge as well. It's called Elastique, and it's a very, very good sounding time compression expansion algorithm. So I just did a classical, it's actually a jazz record album, but I did the editing, and usually I use Pro Tools to do my classical editing. But for the first time, I just switched over to Reaper. And the reason why I switched to Reaper for this one was because it was a session that needed to be matched to video. And the client that I was working for didn't want any frames to drop in the audio. So I had to do all the same kinds of edits that we would normally do as classical engineers, but I had to make sure that there was, usually when you're doing classical engineering, you don't have to worry about classical editing, you don't have to worry about the video frames. But this was a case where I did. And so I opted to use Reaper because when I tried to do time stretching within Pro Tools to get it to work right, it was really clunky out of the box. I couldn't find a good way to do it. And so one thing that I would share is that you showed us the snap feature within Reaper. And there are some, for sound designers and also classical engineers, there are some interesting tricks that you can use with snap. One of them is that if you're using markers, as we use a lot, they're called something different in Pro Tools. But you know what I'm talking about, time markers in the session that you can jump to. When you're in snap mode in Reaper, it snaps to those. So if you are working as a sound designer and you are doing frame by frame, let's say sound design for animation, and you have markers that are in very strict points, you can put Reaper into snap mode and it will snap to markers, not just measures. So that's a cool trick.
Yeah, to do a marker, all you have to do is select where you want, hit M, there's your marker. And you can actually like right click and edit the name of the marker. So they're all like named different things. And I just saw a question pop up about pitch, but yes, it retains the pitch. It retains the audio. When you stretch the audio, it retains it really well. I mean, if you stretch it like way the heck out, it's going to morph it a little bit, but it does. It retains the audio really well. And if you have a whole song and you just change the BPM, it will stretch everything or push everything to match that as well. It's pretty cool. And it retains the sound really well.
The other really awesome trick that I wanted to share in case folks didn't know is that if you're in snap mode, if you're familiar with Pro Tools shuffle mode feature, where you can snap Pro Tools regions together and you juxtapose them or jut them up right next to one another. In Reaper, if you are in that snap mode, it will also snap to the end of any other item. It does not have the feature like in Pro Tools where you can throw it to the left or the right and it will snap, like shuffle mode in Pro Tools where it'll snap to whatever region you have to the left or the right. So it doesn't do that. But if you're looking for shuffle style editing within this tool, you can do it if you turn on that snap mode.
I just saw a question. That's really cool, Greg. Thanks for sharing. Someone just said that they weren't happy with Reverb and Reverbate. I would say, yeah, Reverb, the stock plugins for Reverb on Reaper are not good. I don't use them. There's a really good one that's free Bahala makes a free one, and Old School Verb is a plugin that I like that's free. So you can grab either one of those. They're great reverbs and completely free. So you can get those and use those with Reaper as well. Well, somebody said something about the chat. So like I can only see what's popping up one at a time. So
I can start asking questions, Jam, if you can just go down the list.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. So about the pitch though was, I think the question was about if can you not retain pitch? Is there a way to not retain pitch as you stretch?
Not without a pitch shifting plugin, because it does retain it. So if you're trying to stretch audio out to make it sound distorted, you would need to use a plugin to make it sound distorted, because Reaper automatically retains the pitch, as far as I know.
Actually, you can change the setting. You can change it within the preferences of Reaper. You can change stretching out process that Jam showed us. You can change it so that it'll change between varispeed, which would mean that the pitch changes when you change the speed, or you can change the setting where when you do time stretching, it retains the pitch.
See, I learned something new. I'm going to have coffee with Greg sometime, because he's sharing all kinds of stuff I didn't know.
Awesome. All right. So Lillian asked, how do you zoom in and zoom out?
You can just scroll your mouse when your mouse is on the screen. You just use like the scroll of your mouse, or there's a here, I'll just share my screen one more time. There's this over here to scroll up and down. And then if you click here and you use your mouse scroller, you can zoom in and out with your mouse scroller. Boop, 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 boop.
Cool. And how about master bus automation? That's Bruno.
So what I do, if I have, Greg might know an easier way to do this, but if I did want to do something automation wise in my master bus, I would just I can create like a second one that I send everything to. Greg, do you know how to do it like on this actual master bus?
Sorry, what was the question?
Master bus automation. Is there a way to do it on this master that Reaper provides you? Because if I do,
yeah.
Yeah.
So that trim, you see that little trim guy right there?
Oh, here we go. There it is.
There you go.
Haha. Yep. There it is. So you just add it to there. And then that you can do it on there. Trim.
Nice.
One thing, if you wouldn't mind me just pointing out to some of the people that are maybe thinking about Pro Tools, Reaper, maybe you use both if you're like me. The master bus is a little bit different in terms of how the gain structure works, and effects are actually pre-fader on the master bus, which is the way that all channels within Pro Tools, all regular tracks within Pro Tools work. But there's a quirky thing about Pro Tools in that the master fader within Pro Tools, the effects are actually post fader. And that's not the case with Reaper.
Thanks, Greg.
All right. Let's see. Mike asking, what's pre-gain versus post-gain?
So like pre-gain, and if somebody else wants to jump in, just as like, this is the way I'm going to explain it, might be weird, but pre-gain to me is like what, does anybody have a good way of explaining it? Greg, my homie.
Oh, sure. I'll try. So the way that effects, the way, that effects work is that I actually think that live sound is the perfect example for this. If you've ever had to do live sound, then you have sends that you're generally sending to a monitor speaker on the stage. And that's a classic case where if you're the front of house mixer and you're moving faders around, you don't want that change of mix to affect what the musician is hearing in their monitor. So in situations like that, we use a pre-fader send to go to that monitor and that happens pre-fader, so that when we make fader movements, those don't affect the balance on the stage via the monitors. A post fader send is different in that when you boost or cut via the fader, it will also affect the volume of the send. So that can lead to, in some ways, like if we're designing sound for something, that would mean if we turn the sound down, then say its reverberance also comes down as well. So that can be a really natural way of working. But if you're doing live sound, for example, you want to make sure that you understand how your send structure works on the board that you're working with, and you want to make sure that your sends are pre-fader if you're doing monitor sends.
Cool.
Let's see. David asked, is Reaper compatible with tactile hardware control surfaces? If so, then is there a best choice?
I think it should be, but I don't use that particular one, so I'm not sure. I bet you could look at the specs on the website. Oh, Greg uses one. My man.
So I don't know if you can see this. I'll unplug it so I can actually show you the picture. This is my preferred controller for Reaper. As I mentioned, I'm a sound designer, so I'm not doing big mixes a lot of the time. I'm doing very small little changes to tracks. And because I have to do this a lot, it's very helpful for me to have a controller to help with the ergonomics so that I'm not hurting myself mousing around and stuff. So what this allows me to do within Reaper, this is a fader port, and it's the first version that PreSonus made. And I've heard that the first version of the fader port is actually in some ways preferable. So you can still kind of find these. I actually bought it after the second version had come out. I found one of these new through Guitar Center, I think. But this thing is awesome because it gives me a motorized fader, and I can click on any track, and this motorized fader will snap to whatever that track's volume is. And then the other thing that I really like about Reaper is you can select multiple tracks. And let's say you're looking at your mix bus, and the peak level's a little too high. You can just select all your tracks and then just pull it down a little bit. And all of the track levels will retain their mix balance, but then the peak level will come down. So I'm doing a lot of that kind of stuff. I love it. But
yeah, Reaper should be compatible with most all of them.
Yeah, so there's the two common types are the Hui and then the Yukon. And the Yukon is like the Pro Tools thing, and then the Hui is the Mackie thing. And from what I understand, Yukon and Reaper maybe don't play all that well together. Maybe don't quote me on that, but yeah.
Cool. Does anyone else have any questions for Greg? No.
I love mine as well. I was just gonna say, this is the next like gen.
Yeah,
Greg, is
how
that
are your
right?
experiences? Yeah, so basically NG has the second version. How are your experiences with that and Reaper?
I think it's fantastic. It works. It's super easy. Similarly, the Mackie one, there were some issues, but anything that generation and then after, I've had no issues with at all. And then the SSL as well, like the big six. So I think that there really shouldn't be any issues with like the real mainstream tactile surfaces.
Angie?
Yes.
Is that a motorized fader?
So you can, I always use without the motorized, but you can set it. This generation, you can set it to be motorized. Greg, is that the same on yours?
Yeah, both the units are, the PreSonus version 2 that Angie has is the next iteration. And so, yeah, it's definitely a flying fader motorized.
Yeah. Awesome.
Cool. I saw a question about the tracks in Reaper. They all look common. And in Reaper, tracks. My favorite thing about Reaper, yeah, you just make a track and it can be an aux, it can be a bus, it can be a MIDI, it can be a wave, it can be anything you want it. It doesn't have to be, okay, well, I'm going to choose to send to bus 33. Remember that. Okay, this one 33, remember that. Like, it's just, you just double click anywhere it's a track and then you can do anything with it.
Jam, how do you go about reducing all track volume levels for master headroom?
You can just hit control on whatever tracks that you want to turn down altogether, and then you can turn them all down at one time and then go from there. Which is something I do when I like load a project and I don't want it to blast me out, is I'll load the project and then I'll just grab all the tracks by control click and then just pull down the fader on there.
I have a question with what would you say would be the benefit of Pro Tools over Reaper? Because I think for me, especially, aside from some of the automation tools that I'm just getting used to in Reaper, only because I'm used to them in Pro Tools more, I really see Reaper as coming out even, and with the affordability, the one flat price and availability and accessibility, why do you think that it's not considered as studio standard?
Because Pro Tools is the industry standard. Yeah, it's basically, it just has to do with all the people who are in charge of the world decided that Pro Tools was the industry standard. And even like Logic is coming up. Like people are starting to prefer Logic. My favorite thing about Reaper is that it doesn't crash on me all the time. And I hear like horror stories about Pro Tools crashing and you're trying to load a session and oh, Pro Tools is out again. And I think that's just what it is. And I think the benefit of Pro Tools is that it comes with a lot of really good stock plugins. It comes with, same with Logic, virtual instruments, things like that. So that when you buy Pro Tools, you don't have to buy anything else if you don't want to, but then you end up doing it anyway. And I think that consistency, so you can go to any studio in the world and work there. So they all use Pro Tools because it's what everybody knows, and you can go there and work on anybody's studio. And I think that's like the biggest appeal. But I think people are starting to realize that it's not all cracked out what it's cracked out to be. And I think that Reaper is getting this like underground indie following. And it's really coming up. I have a YouTube channel. I was going to throw it in the comments before, but I'm working on a video right now that is all the things that I could buy if I used Reaper instead of Pro Tools or Logic. So it shows like the massive amount of plugins and instruments I could actually buy by spending $60 on my DAW for life and getting a free upgrade. Every time they update, you don't have to pay for the new version. They give it to you for free. So it's $60 for life and you get every new feature. So I don't know, Angie. I don't know, like, other than someone decided that. Some dude somewhere decided that, and that's what we do. Probably because it came out first.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Let's see. There are a few more questions. Can you speak about different types of saving projects in Reaper? Like in Pro Tools, we have save and save copy in, for example.
Sure. So you could save the project, or you can do save project as, so that let's say that you wanted to do like 3 or 4 versions of your project. You would just save as, and it saves an exact copy of everything that you've done that you can manipulate, change, and then save as version 3, save as version 4. You can actually have multiple projects. That's what I was doing before. You could open multiple projects up on the same screen, and you can actually click on your project where it sounds this way and listen to it. Listen to the same project where you've maybe manipulated a few things to decide what you like better. And let's say that you wanted to drag something over or copy some plugins that you liked to the first version to compare. You can work between 2 projects like that. So that is a possibility.
And then let's see, sound, did you want to ask the question about what types of plugins are you asking? What types of plugins like VST will be supported by Reaper?
VST, VSTI, VST3, VST2.
Okay.
The ones that won't are the ones that are only for Pro Tools, like the AU. What do they call them? AUX? Is that Angie? What's the Pro Tool ones?
Yeah, the AU.
AU. Yeah,
AU.
those are not supported, but 99.9999% of plugins have a VST version. I've not run into one that I wanted that wasn't available on Reaper. Supported by Reaper. Yeah.
Let's see. Greg, do you want to, for a second, can you talk about what you mean by scripting as far as video game audio? Because
I'm sure.
it's
So
fascinating.
literally any action that you do in the Reaper digital audio workstation can be set up as a shortcut. So you can customize it as a keyboard shortcut. And you can set up chains or scripts of actions. And you can automate essentially, each of those mouse clicks or the hit of that button. You can create chains that do that kind of work for you. So if you're in the line of work where you're doing very specific kinds of tasks within a digital audio workstation and they're very repetitive and you have to do the same thing again and again and again, sometimes if you're using another kind of DAW, you might just like bite the bullet and just take the time to do that. But if you're like me, it's all about speed. And if you're working, if you're not working by the hour, literally what that means is that the faster you can work, the more money you can make. So the faster you can get things done, the more time that you have to spend with your family or whatever it is that you want to do. So Reaper is very, very good at being able to create scripts and programs to handle those kinds of repetitive tasks for you. People also like it again because anything can be set up as a shortcut, and that can be set up. So just the other day, I set up. So I was like, I want a jog wheel. I was sort of missing the jog wheel thing. And so I set that up. So now when I hold down Shift and rotate my mouse wheel, Reaper's playback head moves back and forth like a jog wheel would. And now when I'm looking at animations and I'm looking at video frames, all I have to do is hold down Shift and move my mouse. And I've set that up as a shortcut. And now I've basically got a jog wheel here, and now I can hopefully not have shoulder problems and stuff that I've had to deal with messing with computers my whole life.
Thank you.
Yeah, you like Greg was saying, you can make any shortcut you want. So like, I couldn't remember a shortcut, and then I found that nothing was being used that I wanted to use for Control Q. So when I wanted to cut a section of audio, I customized it to be Control Q will delete that section of audio just because I could remember that. So it's pretty cool. You could actually change all of your fast keys to the ones you remember in Reaper. Or I'm sorry, Pro Tools.
Jam, are there notes fields for tracks?
I don't know what that means.
So is that like the comments, Bruno? The comments?
Oh, like for like a marker? Yeah, you can hit M for marker and it pops a marker up top and you can write comments in there for whatever you want. I don't know if you have them like for each individual track, but you can put them in sections of the song. Greg, do you know if you can type notes into a track?
Yeah, there is a way to do it, but it is a feature that, if you're coming from Pro Tools and you're used to notes are super helpful. But yeah, Reaper's a little bit behind the curve with that. It is possible, but I would imagine the other thing that is really cool about Reaper is it's constantly updated. The updates always work.
And they're free.
I guess maybe sometimes there might be regressions, but very rarely there's any regressions. They're free. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would imagine that notes will be a feature that will be better represented within it. But like I said, there are ways to do it right now, but it's definitely not. It's not quite Pro Tools yet.
And then Lillian's asking if we can see how to do the script chains.
The script chains?
Greg, I think that was maybe for you.
Oh, yeah, that was I don't have that kind of like editing that I'm doing for my stuff. Greg's doing like videos and stuff like that.
Yeah. I'm not really prepared to show it right now, but what you're looking for is action items or creating an action list. So if you just Google, Reaper action list, that'll kind of help you get started automating those kinds of processes.
Yeah, and like I was saying earlier, if you go to the Reaper Madness YouTube or just reaper.fm, the videos at the bottom are amazing and they're all broken down here. You know what? I'm just gonna do this real quick. I'm gonna pull up the website.
Greg, could you make a little video of illustrating that and we can tack it into the recording here later?
Well, like Jam mentioned, Kenny Joya has a great series. So probably what we could do is just link to Kenny's. I'm sure Kenny has a video about how to do that, and we could link to that.
Yeah, right here, we can add a link.
Okay.
To
So if
Kenny's
you go
video.
to reaper.fm, videos right here, watch and learn. If you look right here, why and how to use, click. There's all these things, useful techniques, bam, bam, bam. These are all videos, by the way. Bam, bam, bam. Free YouTube videos. Automation. So I didn't cover enough, look at how much you have. Envelope editing, parameter mod, like all the things. So if you're specifically looking for something that you miss about Pro Tools or you want to learn about, you can just go ahead and watch one of these videos by subject. Another thing that's cool about Reaper is it is free for 60 days. You get a trial license. The trial license never stops working, but I implore everybody to just pay the $60 to use it because the company is so awesome and they've done so much. So it's really nice to actually pay them, but they will never stop letting you use it. So if you want to try Reaper, it won't cost you anything for 60 days. Just go play with it and see how you like it. So yeah, I just wanted to show those videos real quick. What about a list of supported interface hardware if you have pretty much anything, you you could use any interface with it. As long as you have an interface that has drivers and works on a computer, you can use it with Reaper. Yeah. All right.
Awesome. That was the list that I had. So I think
yeah, you're welcome. And like I said, it's free for 60 days. Just go try it, watch some videos. There's like I said, I've seen pop up on my For You YouTube thing like 6 or 7 times this week. I've used Pro Tools my whole life. I'm trying Reaper for the first time. I might switch. It's just starting to be like the new thing that people are discovering. And I love it. So I'm a diehard Reaper fan. And I'm actually going to put my YouTube channel in the chat just in case anybody wants to go check out. I do some like gear reviews and that kind of stuff. Let's see, put that in there. And I do educational videos and such if anybody wants to check that out. Chat. That's my thing. And then if you have any further questions or just want to talk to me about anything, feel free to send me an email, jam@denkstudios.com. That's my email. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions that I didn't answer and that you're not finding on out there on the internet and stuff, because sometimes it's just the language is a little bit different. So if you don't know the right words to Google, sometimes that can be hard just because of the different languages that Reaper uses for their different stuff. So if you're like, hey, Jam, I can't figure this out, I'll be like, oh, it's called this. Just like Greg did with you want to Google this. So that wraps it up, I guess.
Thank you, Jam.
Thank you for having me. I had a lot of fun. I hope that y'all learned something. I'll end it like Kenny Joya does. Well, I hope you learned something.
Yeah, Jam, thank you so much. That was incredible. I thought, you know, as somebody that's been using Reaper for a few years, woohoo, woohoo, awesome. As somebody that's been using it for a few years and also teaches it to students, I was really, really impressed by just how succinctly and concisely you helped break down that information. And
Thank you.
I sure learned a lot from you, as you know, so thank you so much.
You're welcome. I did an Instagram reel where I said, I'm gonna show you how to use Reaper in 1 minute. And I did, it was like 59 seconds. I showed like, it was insane, but yeah, like it's that easy to use. And I really appreciate y'all having me here, and happy to show what I know.
Can you link to that video in the chat? Send the link.
I don't know if I can. It's on my Instagram. Y'all can go to my Instagram and dig it out. I don't remember where it is.
Some of us aren't on Instagram.
Let me see if I can find it. I'll look for it while.
Cool. So yeah, incredible lecture, Jam. Thank you so much.